I can't thank Tom Bowman enough for coming to us on short notice. His notice was last night. And he's covering a beat as a couple of your colleagues here are covering that is right now one of the most demanding, or probably the most demanding beat in DC. And trying to get at the truth is even more challenging since the press corps was booted from the Pentagon a month ago?
Almost 2 months now.
2 months.
Yeah.
Well, first a little bit about Tom. Few know the Pentagon better than Tom, and the art of making difficult reporting more accessible for National Public Radio. During his nearly 20 years at NPR, Tom has traveled to Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, often for months at a time. Before landing at NPR, Tom spent nearly 2 decades at the Baltimore Sun, where he covered the Pentagon, Maryland State House, Congress, the U.S. Naval Academy, the National Security Agency, where his reporting on racial and gender discrimination at the NSA led to a 1994 government investigation. Tom is a co-winner of the 2006 National Headliners Award for his reports on the lack of advanced tourniquets for U.S. troops in Iraq. And in 2010, his coverage of a Taliban attack on an Army unit won an Edward R. Murrow Award. So please welcome Tom. And my interest in Tom being here today is quite obvious. The Pentagon is in meltdown on a number of fronts, but I've also been struck by the fact that a lot of what we know about the Pentagon has been uncovered after the press corps was booted from the Pentagon. So I wanted to talk with him a little bit, or have him talk with you a little bit about that challenge and how reporters are working to overcome that isolation and lack of immediate access, and how you can apply that to your own work going forward. So, Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we were kicked out of the Pentagon 2 months ago. I'm sure many realize that we were supposed to sign this new directive that basically said you can't solicit information from anyone at the Pentagon. You have to wait until they release information, then you can report on it. And I was at a reception about a month ago. It was Romanian Armed Forces Day, which we all know is October 25th. And it was at the Army-Navy Club, and there was a sea of military attaches from all over the world: Latvia, Uganda, Canada, Japan. And this guy walks up and introduces himself. He was a military attaché from China. Perfect English. Second tour in the United States. So we were talking, where have you been? How many states? He said, I've been to 35 states. I said, what are your favorite places? He said, I love Boston, and I'm from the Boston area. And he said, I've also been to Cape Cod, where my dad grew up. And I said, you're my kind of guy. So we're just chatting and everything else. And he said, so tell me about this Pentagon press policy. I said, well, basically, we have to wait until they give us information. We can't reach out to anybody in the Pentagon and ask them what's going on behind the scenes. So we have to wait till they release something, then we can report on that. He said, oh, kind of like us. So it's more challenging now at the Pentagon. We can't go to the building. We'll leave that up to Laura Loomer and the other people who are now at the Pentagon briefings. So it's a challenge. You have to, we know a lot of people still at the Pentagon, of course, and a lot of time overseas. The people I know I've spent time with, and I'm still in touch with, people I met in 2009. So that's very helpful. The challenge is during the workday, trying to call them on the phone at the Pentagon. Everyone else is trying to call them too. So that can be a challenge. So the workarounds are coffee and beer. We'll meet after work outside of the Pentagon. You also want to keep in touch, more so I think now, with Capitol Hill, reaching out to people up there, particularly staff members. I think a lot of times people are really enamored with getting an interview with the congressman, and a lot of times it's the staff that know more than the congressman. And we fall into that problem as well, frankly. We have to get Congressman so-and-so on. I would rather talk to his top aide, committee aide, because sometimes they've been there longer than the congressman. So keep that in mind when you're reporting. I would take one staffer sometimes over 5 members of Congress because they're spread thin. They can't devote all their time to a topic that you might be interested in. Number one, retired community. You have to reach out to the retired community as well. And again, a lot of the people I've known over the years, spent a lot of time with, they're now retired, but they all keep in touch with their friends. Whether you're a State Department, whether you're in the military or HHS or whatever, they know each other. It's a very small community. And lastly, the embassies, like the Romanian embassy. This guy invited me to this Romanian Armed Forces Day. I'm in much more touch now with the embassies than ever before. And I'm going to a briefing next week at one of the embassies. So they get a lot of information, obviously, from the U.S. government, or they'll ask us what's going on, what are we hearing, so the bazaar is open. We can kind of share information, what we're hearing. And then also, you know, the think tanks are pretty good. Keep in touch with them, not only to go to an event, but who shows up at those events. Sometimes, that's key. It could be a staff member from Congress. It could be some retired admiral or general that you want to keep in touch with. So scour the room and try to figure out who's there and who you want to talk with. So that's our new reality, I guess, in Washington, is try to figure out how do we move in this new environment where they've shut us out of the Pentagon. And I got to tell you, even if we go into the Pentagon, they're not holding briefings anyway. Hegseth had 2 briefings in the 9 months we were there at the Pentagon. And the funny thing was, the protocol is always calling the wires first. Always calling the AP. So I'm sitting there at his first briefing in the front row, kind of off to the side, kind of looking around, waiting for the AP to get a question. And he points at me. And I'm like, I don't think he knows who I work for, number one. And the other thing is the protocol is AP. He called on me twice. There were 2 briefings, and he calls on me, which I thought was weird. I think part of it because I'm a guy, right? He's not going to call on a woman. I think that's a big part of it. He didn't answer the questions. And frankly, the second briefing was more a harangue at the press. If you go back and look at the video of that, he's haranguing the Fox News reporter at the Pentagon, which was just bizarre. So again, even if we were allowed in the building now, it would be easy to go up to the desk officers and talk with them or run into someone in the hallway. But they're not having briefings anyway. In the briefing they did have, if you've seen that, if you haven't, go back and look at that briefing they just had. I can't wait for SNL to do something. You have to think that tomorrow night they're going to do something on it because it was just bizarre, you know.
Before I open it up to you all, I just wanted to ask, I mean, because the culture of the place has been changed so dramatically, at least on the surface, how has that affected, or has it affected, the long-term relationships that you've established over the time that you've been...
Can have long-term.
Speaking of long-term,
Wow.
yeah,
Pete Hegseth.
you got to buy something now.
Yeah. Wow. So how has that affected long-term relationships, especially infidelity? No, but has that chilled the group that you
In some
relied on?
respects, it has. There's an Army general who works in one of the commands who I've known. I met him maybe 12 years ago in Afghanistan, and I've had beers with this guy when he comes up to Washington. Now he's just ghosting me. And then we did this big piece on Gaza, asking ourselves, how do we get to a famine, right? How did this happen? And I worked on it with a couple of other reporters. And of course it happened, October 7th, the Hamas attack on Israel, and then they shut everything down. So what was going on behind the scenes in the Biden administration, right? So we started talking to people we knew, and then it just snowballed from there. And then someone said, we have to call so-and-so, who's this retired general I've known for years. And I didn't realize he was involved in the humanitarian efforts, briefing the president on this route has to be opened to get into Gaza, blah, 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 number of trucks. So I called him up and I said, damn, I haven't talked to you in a long time. I said, come on over to NPR, we're doing the story in Gaza. I want to, pick your brain. He said, Tom, there's no way I'm going into NPR. Somebody may see me. He's retired. So he had to meet at my house in Alexandria, around my dining room table, a retired guy. There's no question it's a chilling effect. But again, some people are still talking with us, and we just have to hustle more, I think that's the key. And the other thing too is, when we were covering Rumsfeld, who could be a real hard ass, of course, really put a lot of pressure on leaks and don't talk to the press, and it has to come through me. And I found that particularly with the run up to Iraq, that more and more people were popping up as sources. And I think we're seeing that now, right? And you saw it with Tom Homan. Remember that bag of $50,000? Where do you think that came from? Probably an FBI guy that was fired, right? So when you try to put, whoever you are, when you try to put a lid on people, don't talk. And what we've seen with firing people at the Pentagon, C.Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Franchetti fired. What ripple effect do you think that has on the force? And how pissed off do you think people are? Therefore, they rise up. And we're seeing that repeatedly now. All these stories come out in the Post and the Times, right? People are helping us. It, a lot of times wouldn't have in the past, I think. We'll see more of that as we move on.
Who's got a question?
Hi, thank you for doing this. I'm Leah DeGroat. I'm with CQ. I wanted to ask kind of, I think it was, I mean, at least from the outside, I was really surprised when that Pentagon announced its new policy.
I was too.
Yeah, and are you worried that this is kind of like a trial run by the Trump administration? This is something that they want to do at the White House or other branches of government? Like, what is the signal for what's to come for the media?
I don't think it's going to have effect on White House press coverage because he likes to talk, he likes to have people there, so that's not going to happen. Other places, state, I think, I'm not sure. The state has been, I've never been there reporting, but I understand they're pretty much restricted to where they can and can't go. There's a little briefing room, I guess, there. Then they can go to the cafe, I understand. And I was talking to a former state guy who said, I hate going to that cafe because there's always someone running up, some reporter trying to talk to me. So I don't see it happening anywhere else, really. Yeah, particularly the White House, because he loves to come out and banter with reporters.
Hi, Audrey with Politico. I just heard you on Up First this morning when I was walking to the fellowship. So just so cool that you're talking to us now.
It was not cool getting up at 4:30.
Yeah, I bet.
I love NPR and Inskeep. He's one of my favorites. But yeah, to do that, you have to get up at 4:30 in the morning, right? The alarm goes, my phone goes off at 4:30. First of all, you're like, where am I? And then you have to throw down a cup of coffee so you're at least half awake. And then Steve, great guy, but you have a script, right? It's 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It sounds like a lot. It's gone like that. Mm-hmm. And he starts saying, hey, can we add this and put this in? I'm like, And then, as a result, there are things you have to throw out over the side to get to that 3:45. It's really tight. So we had to redo a couple of things. It's like, Tom, do you want to put this back in? I said, yeah, I want to put that back in. So, and then, you're done with it. It's 5:20 in the morning. It's dark, and you're sitting there in your kitchen. It's like, what do I do now? And then I just had a cup of coffee, so it's hard to get to sleep. So I'm in my workout stuff, so I just kind of pass out on the couch, or try to. And then, your heart's beating because you've just been on the radio, and you're trying to change everything. You had a little coffee in you. And then you try to get to sleep, and then it's like, what am I going to do today? What's the follow-on and everything? Your mind's racing. It's like 5:20 in the morning, right? And then finally I pass out. And then I look at the clock, it's 9:30. So, yeah, we're going to try to get them, this is like inside baseball stuff, we're trying to get them, can we pre-tape, the night before or late morning, because these guys have to get up at, 3 in the morning every day. Is there a way we can do it that's more humane to us? So, anyway, yeah. Too much information.
Well, you sounded great.
Yeah.
But I want.
One last thing. A lot of times I'll go on and I'll say things and I'll say, did I make sense? Because I have no idea what I just said because I'm half asleep. So.
Well, I just wanted to ask you about the news of the week, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I would love your Hegseth predictions, because I think, at one point this week with the second strike and stuff, and Trump was kind of distancing himself at first from the second strike, so it was, maybe likely that Hegseth could take the fall for this. And I think after, the signal stuff, everybody was waiting, when will he take the fall? And I know some people think he will eventually. But yeah, just wondering what you're hearing from inside the Pentagon and other, sources on if he survives all this. And
Yeah, it's all speculation. And I know back in April I was told that Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, and J.D. Vance were all sitting around thinking, right after Signalgate happened, do we look for someone else? And I think that eventually kind of went away. The talk is now coming back about how long can he last. What are Republicans in particular saying on the Hill? So he could leave tomorrow. He could leave in a month from now. He may stick around. We just really have no idea what's going to happen. There is talk. More talk now about the Army Secretary, Dan Driscoll, who, of course, is J.D. Vance's roommate at Yale, who surprisingly was sent off to Ukraine to talk with senior Ukrainian officials. Listen, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen a service secretary talk with leaders of another country. That just never happens. But he has the cachet of knowing Vance. He's a pretty bright guy. So there's even more talk now that he's going to basically take over. Getting back to Laura Loomer, she's on the attack about me, or I think that might be mine. That's called Sherwood Forest, my ringtone. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's all right. Unless something really crazy has happened. So there's talk that he could take over, if Hegseth fails. Laura Loomer is attacking Driscoll because she's a friend of Pete Hegseth, and the sense is she's attacking Driscoll because he's a rival, So.
You never know about the infidelity.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, that's one of the games in DC is who's going to get fired. There was stories, a few weeks ago about Kash Patel is going to get fired. It's one of those Washington parlor games. It happens all the time. And I do know when I was covering Rumsfeld, everyone thought he was such a pain in the ass on the Hill, that I do know then Senator John Warner, who was chairman of the Armed Services Committee, he went to the White House and he said, we can't deal with this guy, Rumsfeld. He's just a pain in the ass, blah, blah, blah. They were going to put this defense guy named John Hamre in that job, right? It was kind of all set to go. Then 9/11 happened. And Rumsfeld became this matinee idol, remember? Helping with wounded people out of the building, so that never happened. So there's a lot of people saying he could go. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. But there can't be any more mistakes, I think. I mean, at some point, if you really keep messing up the Signalgate thing, or something like that happens, your time is is running out, I think.
I'll get over here in a minute. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Hannah Demasay. I'm a White House reporter for ABC, and actually Vance is kind of my lane in terms of the White House. And I actually wanted to ask about Driscoll and, from, the defense side, how do people view him? I'm with ABC News.
Yeah.
And I'm just, Driscoll, I'm curious how people on the defense side view Driscoll, especially over these past few weeks, having to deal with all the Ukraine stuff. Especially as rumors have pop up about a possible replacement, like you talked about the Laura Loomer stuff. Would the generals that you have talked to, they feel comfortable with the Driscoll as
he's
defense
pretty high
secretary?
regard. Pretty affable guy, can get along with people, really smart. Restructuring the Army is his big thing, and then he wants to buy 1 million drones over the next 3 years. So he's kind of the drone expert. I think Trump calls him Mr. Drone or the drone guy or something like that. So again, pretty well thought of. So if he does take over, I think a lot of people will be really happy with that. Maybe we'll get back in the building.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm with the Christian Science Monitor. So I'm curious how you think about balancing. I feel like there have been so many scandals that those stories obviously rise to the top and kind of have their own self-fulfilling nature, and they stay in the news. But how do you balance that with still trying to anticipate? I just feel like I keep thinking there must be so many boring bureaucratic things that are not happening where people got moved from that department because it's transgenic mice or something, and they think oh, that's not one of our priorities, but there's a misunderstanding of what actually was happening in the department. Obviously that's not the Pentagon, but that type of thing. And how do you balance thinking about covering those big stories but also looking for the day-to-day functions that maybe we don't notice right now, but then 6 months from now there's going to be some big issue because a whole department was disbanded or something?
Well, this is where you have to cover the big story, like the Pentagon IG report just came out, or they just hit this boat. You got to follow that, but you always want to have this is where having sources is key. If you don't have sources, you can't do this job. You just can't, and you can never have enough sources. So this is, I call it checking the traps. Before I came over here, after this crazy week, I wrote down a whole list of people I know that I have to get back in touch with. What are you hearing? What's going on in this issue, that issue, right? I mean, I think that's what we all have to do. And again, building more and more sources. A guy that just called here right now is someone I've been trying to reach, and I'll call him, when I leave here. One of the issues with this guy is, the National Guard troops coming to D.C., 500. Have they named them yet? When are they going to come? And issues like that. And then, with the Pentagon, we're working, transgender issues. They're trying to throw out 4,000, 5,000 transgender troops. We're trying to get in touch with some of them. What are you hearing? What's going on? So again, just reaching out to people or people you're trying to reach out to on all these other issues. And then keeping in touch with sources and building more. They may say something you've never even thought of or heard of, right? Like, we're going to do this, or we're going to cut this program, or, we're going to send active duty troops to Akron, or, it's just, we were talking downstairs. This is the craziest time because almost every day something unusual is happening, something that you just never see before with this administration, because it is highly unusual, right? I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Haley Bullis with the Washington Examiner, and I just kind of wanted to keep talking about school shootings, especially with this beat. There's a lot of people that don't want to talk to you and all, more shy about talking to the media, or maybe just aren't media trained. A lot of these defense officials, military guys. What is kind of your opening move to, starting these conversations and relationships with, maybe people that aren't so inclined to.
Yeah. Well, if you're new to the beat, I assume most people here are fairly new to the beat. You can just call some of these people and say, hey, listen, I just started, this job with ABC or the Washington Examiner. We're just trying to get up to speed on, whether it's health policy or defense policy. Can I buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks across the street or in Pentagon City? I think that's wise to do. And some people say, no, I don't talk to reporters. Find someone else. Just keep going and going and going until someone's going to talk with you, Or again, these think tanks are pretty good. I think a lot of times we rely too much on think tanks. I have nothing against, listen, I have a master's degree. I have nothing about higher education. A lot of times these people have PhDs in Middle East studies, and then you find out that they've never left the academy. They've really haven't really gone anywhere. They've studied it. Give me someone that has practical experience and plus, higher education chops. I think that's key. And again, go to these conferences, or there's always someone saying, the Middle East Institute is going to have this thing next week, come on by, and then you just find out who's there. Look at the name tags on the desk. Who do I have to get in touch with? Who'd be good? And then if you just say, listen, I'm new to the beat, or I'm trying to get up to speed on Ukraine or Gaza or this or that. Can we sit down and talk? And then you ask that person, if you were me, who would you talk with? Who else should I know? Who really knows this issue better than anyone, right? And again, just snowballs, like the Gaza story we were doing. I've never been to Gaza. I don't know a lot about it, but I know enough to basically find the people who really know the issue, particularly with humanitarian aid, what went wrong, what was going on behind the scenes, how they were pressuring Netanyahu. We got all that stuff. It actually turned out to be quite good. That helped. Yeah.
Shit hasn't hit the fan, right?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm Shay with The Guardian. I wanted to ask a question about, to your point about reaching out more to members of Congress now, given the restrictions at the Pentagon, whether you think that Democrats are doing a successful job in trying to combat a lot of the Republican marketing around fake press, Pentagon, and generally sort of undermining the military, particularly I'm thinking about, the quote-unquote Seditious Six video, the way that certain Democratic members of Congress have reacted this week to Signalgate, to the double tap strike. I'm just kind of curious whether you're watching that and seeing how they're responding as whether it's successful or, an effective strategy against that.
Who's?
Just the Democratic members of Congress who are responding to that in particular.
I'm not sure the politics of it. I really don't do the politics. My interest is getting a hold of as many people as I can, Republicans and Democrats, and just sit down with them. I mean, there was one Republican congressman. I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan in the Arghandab Valley north of Kandahar, and I noticed this fairly new congressman, Pat Harrigan from North Carolina. I was reading his bio because I saw him on TV. I said, God, this guy's actually pretty good. He was in that same area the same time I was there, right? So I call up his press person and use that as an entry into sitting down and talk with him, right? Hey, we have this thing in common. Can I come to your office and talk? And we had a really good conversation. But, so you try to find a way in to talk to these people. But as far as, commenting on the video that they put out, good idea, bad idea, what are people saying about it, that's really not my thing. And the fake news thing, we only really hear that from Trump and Hegseth and a few others. I don't think too many members of Congress are using that term because they want to get out there and talk to the press too, and get their point of view across. So I don't think, you may hear that from some, right, on the very fringes, but I don't think a lot of them say that. Again, reach out to members of Congress, particularly their staffs, depending on what your area of interest is. We can't do enough of that, starting with me. I got to do more of that.
Hi, I'm Sibel. I also cover the Pentagon national security for USA Today.
I guess what I'm wondering is, for on a beat that relies so much on relationships that go back years, people that you've known for a long time, this kind of thing is how the beat seems to function. What tips do you have, like, for a reporter like me who is new to covering this beat and at this time that has all these new and unprecedented, difficulties, where the usual ways that you kind of get into the network through, PAOs and Flex and these kinds of things are like really dried up, like during the current environment?
I wish I could give you more hope, but it's incredibly difficult for someone just starting to cover the Pentagon because you can't go there, right? And again, you can't call the PAOs. And again, I would say to them, I'm new to the beat. Can we grab a cup of coffee or something? I would do that. The retired community can be pretty good. Some of them are at like places like Foundation for Defense of Democracy, which is a pretty good shop. Center for New American Security, they have a lot of people over there and they do really good background briefings. You're gonna have to find ways in. And again, getting back to the staff, Armed Services Committee, reach out to staffers. I mean, all those members on the Armed Services have committee staff members. I would just start calling every goddamn one of them, right? I'm new to the beat. You start with the press office and then say, who's your committee staffer? Can we all get together and just talk? I'm interested in, and if they say no, just go to the next person, right down the list. Some of them will talk, right? It's labor intensive because you can't go to the Pentagon, but when this all started, they were throwing us out of the Pentagon. There was a colleague of mine that was complaining to a Marine officer, said, oh, they're throwing us out. Poor as us, poor as me. And he said to her, be a Marine. The Marines would find a way around this. Just basically suck it up and find a way around it. And I love that because I think he's absolutely right. You're going to screw us? I don't think that's going to happen because we're going to find out what's going on.
Can I ask one follow-up about the boat strikes? So I guess what I'm wondering is, we seem to be in this situation where the administration, like I see there are a lot of stories, rightfully so, about the legality of the strikes. But we seem to have an administration here that is not concerned that much about the legality question. It feels like in past times, it was like you uncover the fact that these questionable, like all the uncovering of questionable things that the military might have done during the global war on terror or something like this. But now we're in this situation where we have like videos being posted, openly on social media where the legality of the strike is questionable. Like, what do you think about that and how to cover that angle of the legality of the military, like in this
Right.
in this
We've
time?
been doing a lot on that, talking with former judge advocate generals, former general counsels. The legal rationale, we're told, and interestingly, the memo from Justice, laying out the legal rationale is classified. Mm-hmm. And basically what I'm told it says, it never mentions Venezuela. It mentions boats, right, carrying drugs to the United States, which kill Americans, and they use some of that money to buy weapons, right? So since they're killing Americans, we can kill those people. So a lot of people you talk with say that's very thin legal rationale for this kind of thing. But if you have a lawyer that says, it looks good to me, sir, and you're firing judge advocate generals in the military, I think what we're seeing is, again, questionable legal rationale. But all we can do is go to people who used to do these jobs and just say, what do you think about this? And they're going to say, I just think it's illegal. And we just basically say, this is what they're saying, and this is the administration's policy, and keep hammering that home. We're going to see more and more of that, I think, with this recent strike. The rationale they're using for the second strike was the guys were still on the boat. Now, the boat was flipped over, right? And the rationale they used were two things, that they could still potentially get their communications and communicate with their comrades. And the other rationale was they're trying to flip over the remains of the boat. That was the rationale they used to strike it again. Now, a lot of people would say, are you kidding me? Right? But that's the rationale they used. And now it's up to Congress and others to basically hold more hearings if they can. The Republicans may just say, we're done with this. I think it's all over. But we'll see what happens. But the legal rationale is still a very, very serious question.
Thanks for being here. I'm Skylar Woodhouse, White House reporter with Bloomberg News. 2 questions. You mentioned earlier that you're essentially having to hustle more in this new era of hustling. Just what has really worked for you as you maybe tap back into old roots? And then secondly, the administration, the Pentagon, they moved the USS Ford to from where they were stationed all the way to now in the Caribbean Sea. Just curious your thoughts on sort of, that moving of how telling is that, about the administration to sort of take such a massive resource from one, part of the world all the way to the other.
It's almost unprecedented that you would move a carrier from the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, and they're making a port visit in Croatia, and then move it all the way halfway around the world. I believe I've read that 15% of the entire Navy fleet is in the Caribbean now. So the question is, what's the way ahead? Is it saber rattling? Is it to go after drugs? Is it really drugs, or is it more Maduro? You're trying to get rid of him. Trump has acknowledged that he's spoken with Maduro. So, right, it's just what is the way ahead here? What is all this about? Because you can't think it's only about drugs, because if you blow away a couple of dozen boats carrying coke, many of them were destined for Europe, by the way. That semi-submersible submarine they took out, and by the way, rescued 2 survivors, one from Ecuador, one from Colombia. That thing was on a heading for Europe. That wasn't going to the United States. And a lot of these do, in the Caribbean, head toward Europe or Africa, especially those semi-submersibles. There's one on display to this day in Key West, Florida. And it's about as long as this room. You would not want to get on this thing, which is why it's semi-submersible, right? But they're not really telling the truth about where a lot of this stuff is going. But yeah, again, where's this heading? Why are they doing it? It's still an open question.
Hi, I just had a question just because yesterday and this morning on my feeds, I have been seeing more articles from some publications about the impeachment process of a sitting secretary. They were geared towards Hegseth. And I'm curious from you if you're, that would probably be very extreme. I don't think we've ever had a secretary impeached. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, are you hearing from members of Congress that's getting to a point where they feel like Hegseth, is really unable to do his job or lead effectively, or would action come generally first from the White House or from members of Congress is what I'm essentially asking.
Anyone's going to impeach him since the Republicans run Congress. A number of Republicans so far have said we stand behind Hegseth. He made a mistake with Signalgate. One congressman I saw said, well, he hasn't done that since then. So so I think I can stand behind him. So yeah, the Democrats are saying he should be fired or he should resign. I haven't seen any Republican at this point who agrees with that view that he should just go. But again, like I said, with Rumsfeld time, they're not going to announce to the press or anything like, we think so-and-so should leave. They're going to go to the White House and say, you know what, maybe it's time for someone else to come in. So we'll just see what happens in the coming weeks or so. There can't be any more mistakes like this, I think. That's my gut. Because then some Republicans may start saying, we can't have this anymore. So we'll see.
Hi, I'm Katie Stanton. I work for Tax Notes. You talked a lot about, the new Pentagon press policy kind of obviously being iced out in terms of access. But there's also been a trend not just towards icing out the press, but actually attacking the press. I think of like the new list on the White House website of individual names and outlets for people. How has that also kind of affected your ability to do your job, if at all, beyond just not having access, but actually being like, attacked, whether it's on social media, through press conferences, et cetera?
I haven't really been attacked on social media. I get, comments every once in a while from people on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and so forth. I really don't pay much attention to it. Some of my colleagues will actually reach out to people who are attacking them. I think that's unwise. Just let sleeping dogs lie. It's not going to help anybody. And those people you're attacking love to just keep this train rolling, right? You're fake news, or I'm the real Pentagon press corps now. It's just unwise to stay away from that. It doesn't matter what the White House says about this press, that press attacking us. We're all doing our jobs, I think. So, and you have to expect that. It's just highly unusual under this administration. I mean, let's face it, a lot of White Houses don't like the press. You think Clinton liked the press with Monica Lewinsky, right? And Biden with the stories about he's too old, he should resign. I mean, most administrations don't like the press. And we all have to accept that and just say, well, we're going to do our job and you can say whatever you want. And I'm here to ask questions. The challenging thing with this current administration is, you ask a legitimate question. It's like, well, who are you from? And it's like, that's fake news. Okay, how about you? I mean, that's what's troubling about people covering the White House now is that whole thing. And yeah.
Is it time to change the strategy, though, of remaining quiet when you have a principal attacking you disparagingly, either personally, your outlet? Is it ever acceptable, in your view anyway, to answer back and say?
That would be my gut, to answer back. I'm not sure what it's going to get you. I don't like when he says or anyone else says fake news. I think I would stop them there and say, hang on a second, it's not fake news. But it might make you feel good, but does it mean anything? Maybe for people watching, they would like to see something like that. I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there and have people say that.
Yeah. Is it beholding to the press corps or of any one of those institutions to kind of join together and react in support of people in the moment? Or do you think that's not?
Again, it would make you feel good, but what's the practical impact of that? It would be just more the Trump show, I think. Mm-hmm. Ending the press conference, throwing everyone out. What have you achieved besides a good feeling? I think, if a member of Congress would say that in a scrum at the Capitol, I think you could maybe challenge that person, right? But with Trump, it's just, again, he was just calling someone else. I suppose what you could say is, point to you, and I'm going to tell you, well, Mr. President, you said that's fake news. I mean, you could do something like that. I'm not sure if the press corps is cohesive enough to mount that kind of a strategy. And again, what would it achieve? Right? You'd get, TV news would pick it up. Brian Selter, the guy on CNN, may say, oh, today at the briefing, this happened. But what does it mean? I mean, the important thing is, and we saw this during Rumsfeld's time, ask a question, a well-honed question of whoever it is. And if they don't answer, and oftentimes whoever it is, public official is not going to answer your question. They're going to answer the question they want you to answer. You just be persistent. Well, thanks for your answer, but you didn't answer my question. And let me ask it again. And this happened all the time during Rumsfeld. And he wouldn't answer, sometimes 3 times. And he said to me once, how many times are you going to ask that? But the people watching at home or listening say, yeah, got it. He's tap dancing. And that's where it can be a little more effective, you know.
Yeah.
Hi. I just had two more questions, but one is kind of more related to what's going on with Hegseth and his leadership. Admiral Halsey is retiring, I think, next week, and what's been reported, at least, due to conflict with Hegseth himself. Do you think we'll see more retirements like that? And is that kind of, from what you're hearing from insiders, a common conflict within the department right now?
I think we probably will see, we're seeing more retirements at the colonel level.
Mhm.
This guy I know who was shifted from his job because he put something on Facebook supporting U.S. Afghan allies, more should come to the United States. They removed him because of that. And he told me that you have to go through this transition program when you're leaving the military, that rank or higher. And this guy told me that transition office has never been busier. People are just saying, I'm out of here, you know. Halsey, I was told, had reservations about these attacks on the alleged drug boats. He's leaving 1 year into a 3-year tour. And people I talk with on the Hill say they have never seen this happen. Somebody 1 year into their tour retires while there's basically, you know, fighting going on in his AOR. They've never seen that happen. Now the question is he going to say anything? He's retiring next week, I guess.
Mhm.
Is he going to say anything? Like kind of like what Milley did when he left?
Yeah.
Or is he just going to say as an honor to blah, 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 and then move off into the sunset?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'd be surprised if he said anything, but he may. We'll have to see what happens. Yeah. And then the question is he going to bring him up to the Hill for any hearings, which would be a good idea. But again, who runs Congress?
Right. And then secondly, with this, you know, administration and just reporting right now, there's a lot of anonymous sources that are talking to reporters and, you know, giving us the inside look to the administration and what's going on in the White House. But there's also a lot of debate about whether or not we should be using anonymous sources as much as we all, especially with how the White House and the administration is turning around and just saying, well, these are, you know, not trustworthy because they're anonymous kind of thing. Do you think we over-rely on anonymous sources, or do you think it's a necessary thing to make sure that we are getting the inside perspectives that we wouldn't get otherwise?
I think both. I think they're overused and they're necessary, especially in Washington. You see this all the time in Washington. You would like to have people go on the record, but if they're giving you information and their boss doesn't think that's a good idea, would you sacrifice your job going on the record? That's what you have to ask yourself. And most people would say no. Sometimes the boss knows this person is giving information. Along those lines, before the IG report came out, I got like 5 or 6 paragraphs, basically the whole thing, while I was in the studio talking about something else, and I'm looking at my phone like, holy shit, right? And then we ran out, and the person said, don't quote this verbatim, but this is what the report says. It came out the next day. And that person, you know, didn't want the name used, but it was gold. It was right. And this is, again, getting back to sources. You know, you have to have a blanket of sources, a web of sources, because somebody may be telling you something to stick it to someone else. And this other guy would say, Tom, what you heard from this person, it's about 50% right. This is kind of what's really going on here, you know. And again, getting back to the boat, you know, some people said, well, it was just debris. You know, they were clinging onto debris like the Titanic or something, right? And then other people said, no, there was actually a boat there. So it's all this. What do you see when you're looking at the video? Do I see debris? Do I see a hull? And guys, is that a boat? Is that debris? Right? What about communications? Well, the ability to try to communicate was one of the reasons they used to strike the boat again. Others said, no, they had a radio. They're trying to reach out to people. So you have all this stew of information about that, which is why you have to reach out to as many people as possible. Yeah, anonymous sources, it's the wave of the present and the past and the future in Washington. It's just the way it works. But a lot of people agree, say, too many anonymous sources, but you have to trust your sources too, right? And sometimes, they're maybe half right, and you have to be careful.
Given your experience covering Rumsfeld, what do you think about the parallels, the comparisons that are being made right now between what's going on with regards to Venezuela and the precursors to the Iraq War?
That was completely different. Everybody knew they were going to go to war in Iraq. I mean, they sent all the military equipment over there. They gave him an ultimatum. You knew something was going to happen, right? Because they've been talking about it for a long time. And everybody I talked with in the Pentagon, they knew it was going to be an attack. They were worried they were not going to send enough forces to complete the job and police Iraq, right, after Saddam fell. So we all knew at the Pentagon was definitely going to happen. The question is, what was the date, right? That was the only concern. With this thing, again, I'm talking to Maduro. We may hit land targets. We're going to go after the drug boats. No, we may go after his government. So it's this mishmash of information coming from Trump, coming from the Hill, coming from the Pentagon. There's no question the Iraq thing, and before that Afghanistan, no question it was going to happen. Absolutely none. They tried to talk to Saddam to leave. They gave him an ultimatum, but we knew that was going to happen, no question. In Afghanistan, even more so. I mean, Bush, remember at 9/11 in New York, basically said, we're going to do it. Pretty soon they're going to hear from us, right?
Thanks for doing this, Tom. I'm Grant Schwab. I'm a Washington correspondent for the Detroit News. I'm mostly on the autos beat, and I'm not squarely defense law. Occasionally there's some intersection. So I'm not in this world every day, but what I see is like a constant stream almost of scandal. It's scandal after scandal. It's kind of like the Steve Bannon, muzzle velocity kind of thing. Yeah. But as someone who's in this world and has been doing it a while, what things are happening structurally or thematically that isn't rising to the headline level that is, a big friggin' deal in the world of military and defense for this country that is getting buried right now? And 15 years from now, we'll look back and say that was really important about this era.
I think that getting back to the drones and Driscoll, buying all those drones, millions of drones, what are you buying, what are you not buying? And if you're going to buy all these drones, what are you sacrificing in your defense budget not to buy, right? Is it going to be, we're not going to build another aircraft carrier? Is it we're not going to build another submarine? All of that going on. And then looking at China, we've kind of forgotten about China and the South China Sea, the military challenges, Taiwan. Ukraine is still kind of front burner, but those issues, working with the alliances, are you going to cut troops in Europe? So all of that kind of stuff going on, particularly in the Far East. What are you doing in exercises with, let's say, Singapore, with the Philippines? I was going to go out to the Philippines with the Marines. They were going to do this, kind of little war game out there, and that kind of fell through. But that's the kind of thing I would want to spend more time doing. Go out to the Pacific, because that is the future. Something's going to happen there, right? We just don't know what that is. And then, Iraq, I still want to get back to Iraq and do stories about going out to the remnants of ISIS. I spent a lot of time there. Also in Syria. This is a huge prison called Al Hol. It's this prison camp with 44,000 women and children in it. It's a hell of a story. And there's worry that it's going to be a jihadi university if you can't send those people back to their home countries. Many of them are Syrian and Iraqi, but some come from the United States, from Britain, France, Germany, Tajikistan. So I'm trying to get over there to do more stories on that. We actually did a story my colleague Sasha Pfeiffer did a story well, I helped her with because I know the people dealing with it. They got 2 kids, American kids, that were in this Al Hall camp back to their grandparents in either Michigan or Minnesota. It's a hell of a story because the son decided to fight for ISIS and got married to a woman, I think from North Africa. They had a couple of kids, and these kids are just languishing in there. But they were Americans, you know. So more stories like that I find fascinating. That kind of stuff, China. But yeah, I mean, you got to focus on the crazy story of the day.
Right.
I keep telling people, we're like short order cooks, right? There's something on the griddle, right? It's your omelet. But I'm making, oatmeal in the back stove. It's not bubbling yet. And then over here, I'm making a souffle. So we're doing that every single day. And you always want to have a long-term story you're working on. Could be, China. Can I get over there and go on a training exercise? And of course, we're all about sound. So you want guys hitting the beach. You want the osprey coming in and landing, or you want to hear the sounds of Al Hall camp, people yelling, screaming, and so forth. Yeah, I mean, there are probably 1,000 stories out there that we just don't have time to chase or are happening under the radar. And one of the reasons is, no one's talking with us at the Pentagon,
Hi, thanks for doing this. I'm Mia McCarthy. I work for Politico covering Capitol Hill. I'm also from Boston.
Great. What about?
West Roxbury?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I wanted to ask about. Sorry, go Pats. We're coming back. Dynasty Part 2. Anyways, it's been way too long. Do you know how awesome it was growing up in Boston from 2? Anyways. So I'm a Capitol Hill reporter. I know you're saying now that you're relying on a lot of Capitol Hill sources. I guess have you seen your Hill sources be more or less reliant given the current situation with the Pentagon? And I guess do you have any concerns that Capitol Hill has a ton of press access right now? I guess not that it would necessarily reach the level of what the Pentagon has right now, but do you think any of that is going to be, I don't know, necessarily taken back if more leaks are happening through the congressional route?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think, members of Congress love to get out there and talk, right? You can't prevent that. They want to do that. And more Pentagon reporters are showing up in the Hill. Friends of mine are going up there even more, running around talking to people. I probably should get up there. I don't have a Hill pass anymore, but maybe I should get one and just hang out there even more. But I don't see it. I mean, everybody leaves, especially if you give it to Congress. You must have just announced it in Lafayette once you give it to Congress. And everybody knows that. Every administration knows that. And that's why a lot of times they won't give it to the Hill until they're ready to announce it. Because they know as soon as it goes up. And that IG report went up to the Hill on Monday.
No.
It only took a day and a half.
Yeah.
I know, that's actually was pretty slow. I was surprised.
You were talking earlier about how there are more retirements happening on the defense side than there seems to be in a long time. Is there a concern with some people in the defense world about the rate of replacement of those people? I assume they're so experienced in what they did. I'm just curious if, there's a concern of whether or not there's enough people to replace those who are leaving. Who had so much experience.
No, there's definitely a concern. You're losing very experienced people who are really good. You can always find someone to plug in to that job. Are they any good? Are they? Some of the positions they've announced to the Pentagon, some of the officers are, let's say, less than stellar. So I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a concern about some of the people they put in key positions. The good news for everybody is the officers they have in key positions, like at Central Command, the Pacific, and in Europe. I know all of those people, 2 of them pretty well, and they're really, really good people, really solid. They're not talking with us, but they're still, pretty good people.
Are there concerns those people could possibly leave, or are those who
No, I think they're going to stick around. Yeah. And they know enough to kind of under the radar. They're not going to say anything that would jeopardize them.
You mentioned in the sometime earlier, the retired general, I think, who didn't want to be seen meeting with you, and the chilling effect. And obviously, right now they're investigating Kelly. I'm not entirely clear on whether that actually could turn into anything tangibly inconvenient for him. But why are retired? I mean, what reasons would a retired officer have to be concerned about that, aside from maybe they just want to preserve their own access? Is that the main reason?
No, this person still works for the federal government.
Oh, retired from, I see. Okay,
uniform,
but not from government. I
Right.
see. And so, but then
Which
among
is
the...
weird. It's like, who's going to see you walking to NPR?
Well, some people do have high opinions of themselves.
I know.
No, so then among the retired community who are not working in government, are you noticing a chilling effect?
Yes.
And is that just personal reputation? And they want to be able to
Well,
not have their access cut off?
And women leave the uniformed service and go over to the defense industry. So a lot of them don't want to talk because I'm working for, let's say, Lockheed or something, and if I get out there and sign some letter, or they'll put pressure on the company. Why are you still hiring this guy? It's a strange time.
Yeah.
And the whole Kelly thing. Some people are critical of him saying that. I've heard some people, retired generals on TV, saying, he didn't have to do that because it undermines the active duty military. Of course, we're going to tell them, you don't have to follow a legal order. One guy said it kind of makes us look bad. And also, nothing he said, the others said in that video, they never mentioned Trump. They never mentioned the Caribbean. They never mentioned what's going on with the drug boats. They basically just said you have to follow the law. You don't have to follow illegal orders, period. So what's the rationale for court-martial? Tell me. So I think that's just going to go away. It's just harassment.
I know you said that most of the Republicans on the Hill have defended Hegseth, but I'm wondering, do you see a point or have you talked to people privately where they do reach a breaking point? Because I know, especially with Wicker, he was really angry that they weren't being, they weren't being given information, the whole Bridge Colby stuff with, taking troops from Europe. Like, they were upset publicly about some of the things that Hegseth has done, but do you think that would ever amount to them taking a stand on it, I guess, or is it more just like private concerns?
No, that's a really good point. I haven't seen anything that Wicker has said so far about Hegseth, about the drug vote, the double tap. He's going to be a key person to watch. And I keep telling our people, we should just sit outside of his office, get a sleeping bag and sleep out there, just wait for him to come out and basically say, what do you think? You're pretty upset about it. Are you going to have a hearing? I'm not even sure if anyone's even reached out to him and even asked him that simple question, right? So again, he's going to be the key person, and Thune will as well, but even more so Wicker, right? Is how far is he going to go in this? Or is he going to say, well, I think we're good. We had a briefing from the good admiral, and I think we're okay. I mean, that's going to be something interesting to watch, next week.
One more question before I let you go, and thank you for spending this time with us. I asked this of a Justice Department or former Justice Department official who was here last month, but and maybe the boat strike is this moment, but what would you be looking for to get a sense that the fabric of the place, of the institution, has been, altered in a way that's has some permanency? Is it the boat strike and the judgment calls that are being made there, or is there something that you're looking for that says, yeah, this place has gone down the rabbit hole?
It's hard to say. The boat strike was questionable, I think, with a lot of people. The legal rationale from justice is pretty thin gruel, I think most people would argue. I don't see anything really over the top beyond that could happen. I would look for, and this is, I've never seen this happen, like a senior person resigning and then saying, I'm resigning because of what I'm seeing in this administration. I've never seen that happen. If that happens, then I think that's very serious.
So you're looking pretty closely at Halsey.
Yeah, we'll see if he says anything. That would be of interest. I would doubt it. Because, again, you look at Mark Kelly, and they could bring him back in active duty and court-martial him or threaten him or say, you're not going to be able to work in any defense industry, or we're going to make sure you don't serve on any boards. So I think a lot of these people, the sense I get from talking to people is they'll just go quietly into that good night.
Well, that's probably a good place to drop it. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but join me in thanking Tom for spending the time.